The Kingdom of Spain, a real medieval history. The story of the Kingdom of Spain is not the tale of one single realm, but rather the epic unification of several Christian kingdoms across centuries, fighting against a common enemy and eventually forging one of the most powerful empires in world history. It all begins in the early 8th century. In 711 AD, Muslim forces from North Africa, known as the Moors, invaded the Iberian Peninsula. Within a few years, most of modern-day Spain and Portugal had fallen under Islamic rule. But in the remote northern mountains, small Christian kingdoms survived. From these outposts, a centuries-long war of resistance and reconquest began. This war would later be known as the Reconquista. The Kingdom of Asturias, founded by a Christian nobleman named Pelayo, was the first spark of resistance. Legend says that Pelayo defeated a Muslim army at the Battle of Covadonga in 722. This was not just a military victory, but a symbol of Christian defiance. From Asturias, new Christian states would eventually emerge: Leon, Castile, Navarre, Aragon, and Galicia. Each of these kingdoms had its own monarchs, laws, and identity. But they shared one goal: to push the Moors back and reclaim the land. Over time, some kingdoms grew stronger while others faded. Castile, originally a frontier county of Leon, became powerful under rulers like Ferdinand I and Alfonso VI. Aragon, too, expanded eastward and southward, becoming a major Mediterranean power. During the 11th to 13th centuries, the Christian kingdoms began to win major victories. The fall of Toledo in 1085 was a turning point. It was the first major Muslim city captured by the Christians. More important conquests followed: Zaragoza in 1118, Valencia in 1238, and finally Seville in 1248. By the end of the 13th century, only the Emirate of Granada remained in Muslim hands. But the unification of Spain as a single kingdom didn't happen through war alone. It happened through marriage. In 1469, Queen Isabella of Castile married King Ferdinand of Aragon. Their union was not just a royal romance, it was a political masterstroke. Together, they ruled their kingdoms jointly and became known as the Catholic monarchs. Under Ferdinand and Isabella, the final phase of the Reconquista began. In 1492, after a bloody siege, they captured Granada, the last Muslim stronghold in Iberia. That same year, they sponsored an ambitious voyage led by a Genoese navigator named Christopher Columbus. His discovery of the New World would change the course of global history and turn Spain into a global empire. The new Kingdom of Spain, although still legally two separate crowns, now acted as one. It controlled vast territories in Europe, the Americas, and later Asia and Africa. It became the richest and most powerful country in the world during the 16th century. But with power came problems. The Spanish Inquisition, established by Isabella and Ferdinand, aimed to enforce Catholic orthodoxy. It led to persecution of Jews, Muslims, and later Protestants. In 1492, the same year Granada fell, all Jews in Spain were ordered to convert or leave. A few years later, the same happened to Muslims. These acts left a deep mark on Spanish history and identity. Throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, Spain fought wars across Europe and struggled to maintain its vast empire. The Habsburg dynasty, which came to power through Charles I, who was also Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, ruled a truly global empire. Gold and silver from the Americas poured into Spanish coffers, but constant warfare drained the treasury. By the 18th century, after the War of Spanish Succession, the Bourbon dynasty replaced the Habsburgs. Spain remained a kingdom, but its power slowly declined. Yet, the legacy of the medieval Kingdom of Spain was already written. Here are some fascinating facts from this incredible story. The Spanish language we know today evolved mainly from the dialect spoken in the Kingdom of Castile, which is why it's often called Castilian. The Kingdom of Navarre existed for centuries and was one of the oldest independent Christian realms in Iberia. Part of it was eventually absorbed into Castile, and the rest became part of France. The city of Córdoba, under Muslim rule, was one of the most advanced cities in medieval Europe, with streetlights, libraries, and hospitals. Ferdinand and Isabella's royal symbol was the yoke and arrows, a motif later used by Spanish fascists in the 20th century. The Reconquista lasted over 700 years, one of the longest conflicts in history. Queen Isabella was one of the few female monarchs in history to rule a major European power independently. She wasn't just Ferdinand's wife, she was queen in her own right. So the Kingdom of Spain was not born in a single battle or moment. It was forged in centuries of war, diplomacy, faith, and ambition. From small mountain strongholds to global empire, its story is one of the most dramatic transformations in human history. The Golden Age of Spain: power, art, and empire. The period following the discovery of the Americas in 1492 marked the beginning of Spain's Golden Age, or El Siglo de Oro. This was a time of immense wealth, imperial expansion, military dominance, and artistic brilliance. By the 16th century, Spain ruled over a global empire. It controlled vast territories in the Americas, including Mexico, Peru, and the Caribbean. Spanish explorers and conquistadors such as Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro toppled mighty empires like the Aztecs and Incas. Ships laden with gold and silver crossed the Atlantic, transforming Spain into the richest nation in Europe. At home, Spain also became a center of art and culture. Writers like Miguel de Cervantes produced works that defined world literature. Cervantes' Don Quixote, published in 1605, is considered the first modern novel. Painters such as El Greco, Diego Velázquez, and later Francisco de Zurbarán brought Spanish art to international renown. In politics, the Spanish monarchs became central figures in European affairs. Charles I of Spain, who became Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, ruled over a global empire so vast that it was said the sun never set on it. His successor, Philip II, made Madrid the capital of a centralized Spanish state and built the Grand Palace of El Escorial. But the Golden Age was not without problems. Spain fought constant wars against France, the Ottoman Empire, the Dutch, and especially Protestant England. One of the most famous events of the period was the failed invasion of England by the Spanish Armada in 1588. The defeat was a symbolic blow to Spanish dominance at sea. Spain also struggled with inflation and economic decline. The massive influx of American silver caused prices to rise dramatically. Many Spanish nobles saw manual labor as beneath their status, leading to a weak middle class. The wealth of the empire flowed into wars and luxury, but little was invested in long-term development. By the late 1600s, Spain was showing signs of decay. The Habsburg royal line became weakened by intermarriage and internal divisions. In 1700, the last Habsburg king, Charles II, died without an heir. This led to the War of the Spanish Succession, a conflict that drew in most of Europe. The decline of empire and Bourbon rule. After the war, the Bourbon dynasty took the throne, with Philip V, grandson of King Louis XIV of France, becoming king. This marked a new chapter for Spain. The Bourbons implemented reforms to modernize the army, economy, and administration. They centralized power in Madrid and reduced the independence of former kingdoms like Aragon. Yet Spain's imperial power continued to fade. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, Spain lost much of its colonial empire. The Napoleonic Wars devastated the country. In 1808, Napoleon invaded Spain and placed his brother Joseph Bonaparte on the throne. This triggered a brutal resistance war, the Peninsular War, in which Spanish guerrilla fighters played a major role. After Napoleon's defeat, Spain was left weakened. The early 1800s brought revolutions across Latin America. One by one, Spain's colonies fought for and gained independence. By the mid-1800s, only Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines remained. Spain also faced political instability at home. The 19th century was marked by civil wars, military coups, and a struggle between liberals and conservatives. The monarchy was abolished and restored multiple times. In 1873, Spain briefly became a republic, only to return to monarchy in 1874. The Spanish Civil War, a nation divided. In the 20th century, Spain once again stood at a crossroads. Economic hardship, social unrest, and political polarization tore the country apart. In 1931, King Alfonso XIII went into exile, and the Second Spanish Republic was proclaimed. The Republic tried to implement progressive reforms, land redistribution, secular education, women's rights, but faced strong opposition from conservatives, monarchists, and the Catholic Church. By 1936, tensions exploded into full-scale civil war. The Spanish Civil War was a brutal conflict that lasted from 1936 to 1939. On one side stood the Republicans, a mix of leftists, anarchists, communists, and Democrats. On the other side were the nationalists, led by General Francisco Franco, supported by Fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. The war devastated the country. Cities were bombed, villages were massacred, and families were divided. One of the most haunting moments was the bombing of Guernica, immortalized by Pablo Picasso's famous painting. In 1939, Franco's forces declared victory, and a long dictatorship began. Franco's dictatorship and the return of the monarchy. Francisco Franco ruled Spain as a military dictator from 1939 until his death in 1975. His regime was authoritarian, nationalist, and conservative. Political opponents were jailed or executed, regional languages like Catalan and Basque were banned, and censorship was widespread. During World War II, Franco maintained a position of official neutrality, though he sympathized with the Axis powers. After the war, Spain was isolated from much of the world but gradually reintegrated during the Cold War due to its strategic location. Franco had no official successor, but in a surprising move, he named Juan Carlos, the grandson of former King Alfonso XIII, as his heir. Most expected Juan Carlos to continue Franco's authoritarian legacy. Instead, after Franco's death in 1975, King Juan Carlos I led Spain through a peaceful transition to democracy. Modern Spain, a constitutional monarchy. Today, Spain is a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary democracy. The king is the head of state but holds mostly ceremonial powers. Real political authority lies with the elected parliament and government. Juan Carlos I reigned until 2014, when he abdicated in favor of his son, Felipe VI. King Felipe is now the symbol of national unity. However, modern Spain still faces challenges: economic inequality, political corruption, and tensions between central government and regions like Catalonia and the Basque Country. Spain is a member of the European Union, the United Nations, and NATO. It is a developed country with a rich cultural heritage, from flamenco music and bullfighting to world-class literature, architecture, and cuisine. Fascinating facts about Spain's journey. The Spanish Empire was once so vast that it included parts of the Netherlands, Italy, North Africa, and even the Philippines, named after King Philip II. At its height, Spain controlled nearly one-fifth of the world's landmass. Spain was the first country to circumnavigate the globe, the expedition started by Ferdinand Magellan and completed by Juan Sebastián Elcano. Spanish is the second most spoken native language in the world, thanks to the empire's global reach. Despite being a dictatorship, Spain remained officially a monarchy under Franco, with the throne vacant until he chose a successor. Spain's peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy in the late 20th century is often cited as a model for other countries. Conclusion: a kingdom forged through time. It is a kingdom forged not in a moment, but in centuries, a nation that once ruled the world and then rebuilt itself on the ashes of its own divisions. Its story is one of resilience, culture, and identity, a story still being written today.